Let's be honest. Jay-Z was never supposed to lose. Not in 2001. Not to Nas. Not to the guy who peaked in '94. Jay was the future, the businessman, the golden child of corporate rap. And Nas? He was a relic, a poetic genius gone dusty, a prophet who'd lost the room. But if you think this story begins with Ether, you're missing the point. This wasn't just a diss track out of nowhere. This was a collision years in the making, and in a way, it was inevitable. New York had always been too small for two kings. And in the late 90s, both Jay-Z and Nas were laying claim to the throne. They just did it in very different ways. Jay was strategic, calculated. He dropped Reasonable Doubt in '96 and spent the next 5 years building a brand. He understood the power of partnerships. Rockefeller, Def Jam, Cristal, the NBA tunnels. Jay didn't just want to be a rapper. He wanted to be a mogul. Nas was the opposite. He had Illmatic, arguably the greatest debut in rap history. But his next moves were messy. It was written, leaned, commercial. Got bootlegged to death. Nostradamus? Let's not even talk about it. Where Jay was climbing, Nas was slipping, and New York could feel it. To make things worse, they'd been taking subliminal shots at each other for years. Jay said he was taking over. Nas called himself the second coming of Rakim. They weren't naming names, but they didn't have to. And then there was that moment, the one nobody forgets. Summer Jam, 2001. Jay-Z takes the stage and plays a brand new track, Takeover. He goes after Mobb Deep, then Nas. And the crowd loses its mind.
Smarten up, Nas. 4 albums in 10 years, nigga. I could divide, that's one every, let's say 2. 2 of them shits was due.
It was vicious, surgical. Jay didn't just question Nas's skills. He questioned his legacy. He made him look washed. And at the time, it looked like Jay had one. He had the blueprint dropping in September, arguably the best produced rap album of the decade. He had just Blaze. He had Kanye. He had the culture in his hands. Nas, meanwhile, was quiet. People thought he was done. He wasn't relevant anymore. He was finished. And then, he dropped Ether. December 4th, 2001. Jay's birthday, by the way. Nas releases Stillmatic, and right at the top, a nuclear bomb. Ether wasn't polished. It wasn't classy. It was rage in audio form.
Hey, yo, I know you ain't talking about me, dog. You? What?
Fuck Jay-Z.
You been on my dick, nigga. You love my style.
Nas came for Jay-Z. He called him fake, ugly, a thief, a sellout. He mocked his lips, his clothes, his childhood, his deals. He called him a camel, for God's sake. And it worked. Because Ether wasn't just about bars. It was about tone, energy, desperation turned into fire. The streets started saying it immediately. Nas ethered him. And just like that, the word became part of the language. To get ethered didn't just mean you lost a battle. It meant you got publicly humiliated beyond repair. Jay tried to clap back with Super Ugly. And he went low, real low. He bragged about sleeping with Nas's baby mother. It was graphic, personal, uncomfortable. So uncomfortable that his own mother told him to apologize on air.
The reason the record, I ain't think about Calm, or I ain't think about family, or I ain't think about my mom hitting on her mom, or any female being offended by it, because it was supposed to, it was this personal letter for Nas.
And in that moment, Jay looked shaken. Not as a rapper, but as a brand. This was the first time his polish cracked. Now, let's zoom out for a second. Because this beef wasn't just about two guys. It was about the state of hip-hop itself. By 2001, rap was changing. The underground was fading. Mixtapes were giving way to label rollouts. MTV Cribs was the new validation. Money, champagne, and private jets were replacing ciphers and street corners. Jay embodied that shift. He was the new wave. Aspirational, wealthy, untouchable. Nas was the resistance. Rugged, philosophical, unpredictable. When Nas dropped Ether, it felt like someone punched a hole in the matrix. Like maybe, just maybe, the industry machine could still bleed. Jay recovered, of course. He won in the long run. He dropped the Black Album, built Rock Nation, married Beyoncé. He signed Nas years later. He became the first hip-hop billionaire. But Ether never went away, because Ether wasn't about the future. It was about a reckoning. It reminded us that in hip-hop, dominance is earned, not assumed. That legacy is more than just sales figures and Forbes covers. It's about what the streets say when nobody's looking. Jay had the system. Nas had the soul. And in that moment, on that track, Nas won. Not because his career was bigger, but because he proved that even when the throne looks occupied, there's always room for a coup. And that's why Ether still matters. Because in a culture that's obsessed with power, the most dangerous thing is still the underdog with nothing to lose and something to prove.